which I wanted to actually sort of come back to, is that the gong again. I want to just put that to you as a possibility of experiencing in a sort of meditational state the fact that the here and now is, if you like, that sort of thicker moment, that it's got a little bit of holding what you've just heard and anticipating what might be heard in a few seconds in that now. So it's not a chop of a second, it's actually a vague beingness of consciousness that actually has a little bit of extension in it. And if you allow it like that, you can feel your engagement with the world and the feedback, which is, I consider to be reflexive self-consciousness. And
say that again, please.
Right.
Where you sort of, you're going along and suddenly you said this is the way it becomes reflexive self-conscious.
In the conscious, when you're conscious deliberately in a moment, when you've got that feedback loop of being conscious, like when you're listening to the gong, which is why I think it's such a great meditational stimulus, is you're holding the sound of the gong as it's fading. So there's an image, an aural image if you like, of the sound as it was, the sound as it is now, and it pulses, if you listen to it, and it's fading, and you can anticipate that it's going to disappear, and you hold on to it as you're expecting it. So there's an expectancy, and there's a holding, and there's a now as well. So it's a thickened moment, if you like. And that, while you're doing that, you're constantly feeding your consciousness back into the consciousness again of the last moment and the anticipating of the next. So that, to me, is reflective self-consciousness. In an aural situation, in other words, in a listening state. Yeah? Does that make sense to everybody? No. To do what I'm doing, I'm holding the old image of the sound, if you like, the loudness of it, and I'm feeding it back into what I've got now, which is a little bit less. And in doing that, I'm anticipating where it's going to go next, which is even less again. So I've got one, maybe two loops going back there. Can you see that? Consciousness reflexing, bending back on itself, and saying that's what it was, this is what it is, that's what it's going to be.
You weren't that. I thought that sounds like a conscious process to me. It doesn't sound like a reflexively conscious, self-conscious. I thought a reflexively self-conscious process, and automatically assumed that there was an awareness that one wasn't that while it was going on.
Yeah, but the awareness is actually the experience. It's not the sound, and I'm not the body just listening to the sound. I'm the experience of the sound. Okay?
I think you still need another loop, because the loops you're talking about are relating to the sound, not relating to your awareness of the sound.
No, there is no sound without awareness.
But
sound only exists inside awareness.
Yes, but it's what you're aware of. You can be aware of the sound and all sorts of subtle things about the sound, but you may still be lost in, I'm listening to a sound. It's not the same as coming back and saying, I'm conscious of the sound and looking at your consciousness. That's another greater loop in that sense.
That's what I
said.
Yeah. Yeah. But you're not right. Because
it's indescribable in a sense, but I didn't feel your loops went
Come
far
on.
back.
Whitehead says we have to describe it. It's what, if you're doing that, then the I that you're talking about is separating itself from the experience. But you've never had an I that wasn't in an experience. So it's an abstraction.
Yeah, you've never had an experience that wasn't in the I.
And you haven't had an I that wasn't in an experience. You can't separate the poles. The poles come together and fuse in an experience. There's the sound, and there's the I listening to the sound initially. You bring them together, because what is actually happening is there is an experience of sound.
So there isn't a detachment from all that process?
There is a detachment from that process, because what you're attaching yourself to is the experience, not the I, or the object that you're listening to.
I think the reflexively self-conscious loop is an energy movement, because you can be it's like if you're doing it through sight, you're looking at an object.
Yeah.
Like I look at that Buddha, or I look at you.
And then you return.
And I'm going, in a metaphorical sense, my energy's going out and looking at you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remind myself that I am consciousness, being aware of you. That loop comes back, and I can actually feel that as an energy movement.
Yes, but isn't that bipolar?
Yeah, but it's still, it is, but it's...
You mean in terms of something there that you're going and returning?
Yeah,
oh,
but the going and the returning, what you've got is two ends of a polarity.
And you put in the sound instead of the visual
right.
image. Yeah.
But
we're still talking about it intellectually. What I'm trying to say is there's a feeling.
Do you mean the feeling of doing it?
Yeah, it's the intellect conceptualises it as separate. The feeling feels a movement.
Yeah, and it's actually an experience.
Yeah, it is.
And those two poles are abstractions, is what Whitehead and de Quincey are saying, that collapse into an experience. We never experience them separately, so they're abstractions. And if you get caught on that, what you've got is one unity, which we keep saying is...
You're looking at it from different angles.
Two different poles, yeah. Mm. Right, so the next one is just to pull it right back into a very nice sort of quotation, which is in De Quincey.
In the heaven of Indra, there is said to be a network of pearls, so arranged as if you look at one, you see all the others reflected in it. In the same way, each object in the world is not merely itself, but involves every other object, and in fact is everything else.
Right. And he uses this to explain the thing that Whitehead is talking about when he says that all these things are actually interfused is the word he uses. They interfuse and interpenetrate. Now Eugene used to talk about the same net of Indra as being Jijimuga, this concept that everything is enfolded inside everything else. That to be me here, you guys hold me in being, and I hold you in being, because of course the experience of this room is held by everybody together in being, including the room itself. What we have here tonight is an experience which you can polarize and say, oh, I'm bringing this to it, now you're bringing that, and there was this there when I got there, there was a carpet already there. But actually, all these things exist as experiences to you. And ultimately, that's what science is doing too. It's experiencing the world. And you, as a conscious individual, are as valid as anybody else in your experience. Okay? And it's infinite, and it's interfused with everything else. You know, you're interpenetrating everything else. So that when they say you influence the quantum field, well, Whitehead would say, well, of course you influence every bloody field, you know. You can just measure some of them more strongly than others, but you're actually influencing every bloody thing. And the last quote, which was, while I was doing this, I was listening to the radio, and told you how seriously I take these things. And they had Clarissa Dixon Wright was doing a thing on the radio, and she was talking about making choices and how that she'd actually wrecked their life on one or two occasions, and it managed to magically come back again. And she just remembered what her mother used to say to her, and it just sounded lovely. It just came out to me like a clear sort of image of what we were trying to get to, particularly that thing about entelechy. Her mother used to say to her, leave it to God, Clarissa, he's got a much better imagination than you have. And I just thought that was wonderful, because we're talking about something existing at a level of imagination. Literally, you are participating in the creation of the universe when you become conscious. You can participate in it when you're not conscious, but when you are conscious of it, it becomes a great field of play. It's a game, you know. And all those pearls which are reflecting each other are literally individual intelligences and consciousnesses bouncing off each other and interfusing with each other. And it should be a game, it should be a play. You know, don't take it seriously. God's imagining it, and he keeps on sorting us out every time we make a mess of it. Right. Sorry, I've charged through that to get to the end point, and it's only 10:20, so if you any questions you'd like to ask, you're very welcome.